major issues, and it's a holdover from sort of colonial Victorian, is the issue of sexual preference in many African countries. In Kenya, to be gay, the LGBT community is illegal. They just want to have equal rights, the same privacy and equality as all other Kenyans do. Is that something that you aspire to for your country?
I want to be very clear. I will not engage in a subject that is of no, it is not of any major importance to the people and the Republic of Kenya. This is not an issue, as you would want to put it, of human rights. This is an issue of society.
Right, we want to go back to that disturbing news about Moi Girls School in Nairobi, and reports reaching us say there has been a rape incident at the school. As we speak, furious parents at the school demanding explanation.
An enumerator is recuperating in hospital after she was gang raped last night. Police say she was attacked by 3 people after she was dropped home. Nyanza Regional Commander Vincent Makoha says 2 people have been arrested in connection with the incident.
Many people associate church or any place of worship with safety, peace, and higher religious ideals. But what would you think if right inside the holy walls, a so-called man of God defiled a 9-year-old girl? That is just one of the many stories of young girls in various parts of this country.
A 7-year-old girl is undergoing treatment after she was allegedly raped by 2 teenage boys in Eastleigh.
The incident raises concern over the increase in defilement cases in the area amidst challenges in delivering justice to the victims owing to community interference.
Well, you might remember the bizarre story of the men in Kamahuha area of Maraga who violated a donkey. Well, residents and pastors in Maraga County held prayers over the bestiality incident, hoping to cleanse the area. Charity Kimani has more on that story.
Violence is perpetrated in various forms: rape, domestic violence, sexual harassment, acid throwing, reproductive coercion, female infanticide, prenatal sex selection, obstetric violence, and mob violence, as well as harmful customary or traditional practices such as honor killings, dowry violence, female genital mutilation, marriage by abduction, and forced marriage. Are we ready to discuss woman-on-woman violence, man-on-man violence, mob justice, catfights, bar brawls, and other forms of violence, ultimately not viewed as gender-based violence because of context?
Nilikuwa nimeolewa na huyu jamaa. Tukapata watoto wawili. Lakini sababu ya mambo ya kifamilia tukaachana. Nikaanza kujikalisha. Lakini walikuwa wameninyang'anya mtoto mmoja mdogo. Nikaenda kuona huyo mtoto, lakini last year April 21st nikapigiwa simu na sister yao. Kaniambia mtoto ni mgonjwa niende nikamuone. Nimeamka tukaenda barua zangu zenye nilikuwa naenda. Sanda. Ndio nilienda, lakini nipata mtoto si mgonjwa. Nipata kuna homa tu kidogo. Kampea dawa. Nikalala huko kwa mama yake. Lakini mtoto hakuwa na shida yote. Nafikiri ni mpango tu alikuwa nayo ndio niende. Sasa vile nilienda, tukaongea na mama yake, nikalala huko kwa mama yake. Kesho yake 22nd, mama yake akaniambia hiyo siku sababu nilikuwa nimeomba ruhusa mali nilikuwa naenda kibarua. Mama yake akaniambia nishinde huko nikimonitor mtoto nione vile anaendelea. Labda alikuwa ananimiss. nikakubali na nikashinda. Sababu nilikuwa nirudi kibarua kesho yake. Na nikaamkia, mamake alitoka mapema akaniacha. Nikajipanga, nikatafuta nguo yenye nilikuwa nayo ya kuchange, sikuipata. Na nikafikiria labda anaweza kuwa amechukua kwa kabaka kangu akapeleka kijana wake. Na ni kweli sababu ndo ilikuwa. Nilienda kwenda hiyo nguo na nikachange. Nikitoka hapo ndo nilipata na Maina. Nikamwambia narudi mahali nilikuwa naishi, nitakuja kuona mtoto tena nikipata nafasi. Huyo alikuwa ameficha panga na nyuma. Aliniuliza naenda wapi. Alinigonga na hiyo panga. Nikaanguka. Nikienda kuanguka ndio alinisukuma. Nilisikia miguu za watu wengi wakikuja nikiwa hapo chini. Kitu kingine nilisikia ni mtoto wangu akiscream, na ile kupigwa nilianza kupigwa sasa. Lakini nilisikia sauti za hao watu na niliwajua. Hakutoka hapo vile nilipigwa. Nikiamka nilijipata nimebebwa niko kwa barabara pale juu. Nasikia kama mtoto wangu ndiye alitoka kwa barabara kapiga nduru. Ndio watu wakanisaidia. Sasa vile Maina alisikia sijakufa, alikuja akanishika mguu tena akanivuruta kama amenirudisha kwao akiuliza tika sijakufa. Na hapo mbele before nizirai nilisikia mamake akimwambia nivunja kabisa, na yeye akiambia ati anigonge kichwa ndio nikufe.
Naitwa Judith Obanda. Ninafanya kazi pale Chinga Police Station. Niko upande wa Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Desk. Mara nyingi wakati kumetokea shida kama hizo, victims wengi wakija station, they get more traumatized due to fear of police uniforms. Sasa ku-extract the required information inakuwa ni challenge kubwa kwetu, sababu ya ile uoga. Mtu akifika anaogopa polisi, ile fear kuogopa polisi. Wakati kitendo hicho kilitendeka tarehe 22, akapelekwa Othaya Hospital, akawa referred PGH. The following day the sister-in-law alikuja akachukua P3 tukampatia. After 3 days she came back with the same P3. Akatuambia kwamba survivor amesema kwamba hataki kesi. So nikajaribu kupiga simu, alikuwa mteja, alikuwa patikani kwa simu. So after 1 month mamake akakuja station. Akasema kwamba mtoto wangu aliniambia kwamba aliripoti huko alikuwa amepigwa na saizi anaweza kuongea. So hiyo siku nikaambia OCS wangu na nika proceed Nyeri PGH Hospital kwenda kurecord statements, na ikakuwa na challenge kubwa sana kwa sababu alikuwa hawezi kuongea, alikuwa akiongea kidogo ana faint. So ilibidi nikaa hapo for 4 hours nikaweza kupata hiyo statements, na nikaanza na uchunguzi, nikaanzia hapo sasa. Lakini kesi ilichukua muda kwa sababu mtu akiwa amekaa hospitali P3 haiwezi kujazwa, na kesi ya kama ni grave assault ama assault haiwezi kuendelea bila P3. So after I recorded the statement, she was transferred to Kenyatta Hospital. Pale akaenda akakaa karibu 3 months. Akitibiwa mwishowe daktari wakamwambia kwamba ni permanent disability. Daktari akasema hata akiendelea kukaa hospitali for another 20 years hali itakuwa ni ile ile. So ikabidi to organize vile ataweza kumrudisha pale Meru. Upande wa kotini pia nashukuru Mungu aliweza kunivumilia sababu ya zile delays zangu, mpaka tukaenda ilibidi nijazie P3 Meru. Kuna daktari tulikuwa referred kwake na Kenyatta Hospital, sababu singeweza tena kurudi tena pale kwenda kujaziwa P3 sababu ya expenses. Tukaenda tukajaza P3 na sababu vile victim alikuwa hawezi kutembea. Nikaandika barua kwa koti na koti ikanikubali, ndo nikawapeleka pale Meru, tukaweza kufanya kesi na justice ikapatikana.
My name is Monica Munyendo. I am a senior resident magistrate. I serve at Othaya Law Courts. Now, in the course of my work, I was able to handle a domestic violence case earlier this year. I think the case was concluded in February of this year. And it was one of those cases that were outstanding that has remained entrenched in my mind for all this time because of the nature and the gravity of how the offense was committed. So in this case, it was a domestic violence between a husband and wife. The accused was presented before me, being the husband of the survivor, was brutally, let me use the word brutally if I'm allowed, attacked the survivor in his own home. And the offense, the interesting fact is that the offense happened during the day, and even her cries for help, nobody would come to help her because everybody appreciated the accused person, the kind of a person he is, and nobody was willing to interfere and help her out. In the course of the violence that was inflicted on the survivor, she, I think, broke her neck. I don't know how to use the proper medical terms. And her spine was also broken. And so this left her with a permanent disability. The survivor in this case cannot walk. She cannot move around. Basically, her life changed after this incident that occurred. I handled this matter. I was able to appreciate the evidence that was presented before me, and I made my decision. My decision, I rendered it in February of this year, where I found the accused person guilty, and the charge that he was charged with was a charge of an attempted murder. And after considering the other part that the victim participated was that, first of all, I'll back up and take you back a little bit because of the circumstances under which we even took the evidence of the victim. The victim, of course, is immobile from after what happened. She spent around 2 months in hospital at Kenyatta and was actually released because she was not improving, meaning her situation was as it is. And so she was taken back to her family in Meru and was being taken care of by her mother. We went down to Meru as the court, together with the accused person. Of course, we got enough security. We were able to organize to have the hearing conducted at a police station close to her home. Of course, the situation is that the survivor in this case, they do not have any money. They're very poor people. And so we don't even have proper means of travel to bring her to the venue where we had. She was brought in a pro box. But anyway, things were as they were, and were able to take her evidence on a stretcher just lying out in the open. And it was one of the most difficult cases I've handled as a judicial officer.
Pale kwa ground, ndo at least watu waweze kupata the required information ya kuweza kusaidia and enough ingredients za kesi. Mimi ningeomba serikali kwanza, upande wa polisi KPS, turuhusiwe kufanya kazi bila uniform. Watu wa gender based violence turuhusiwe kufanya kazi bila uniform, na pia polisi kwa jumla tuweke ukali kando, tuwe friendly kwa wale victims, ndio uweze kupata enough ingredients za kwenda kotini. Alafu tukija upande wa koti, watuweze kutuelewa na kutupatia muda wa kufanya uchunguzi.
It was in 2015 on the 9th of February. I was asleep at 2 a.m. I heard a big bang. And suddenly I had 10 men in the house. And they packed everything. Then they came over and they started beating me up. And they asked me, why am I beautiful and I'm not married? And that time I had just moved to Kibera to do a project I was doing in the Kibera slum. I was very new to the environment. So they packed everything, they started beating me up. So they beat me up, then later on they started wearing condoms. So and that is how they raped me. But they also threatened to cut my neck with a panga, with a machete, so that I can be quiet, so I don't scream and all this thing. Well, in between, I can't remember how many raped me, because by the time they were getting to 3 of them, I had already passed out because of the trauma and the shock and the pressure that comes with it.
This teacher just takes a cane and he beats me. He did not like, you've got this wrong. And I could see other people, when they got it wrong, they'd be given like maybe 1 stroke on the hand, end of story. He pulled me over the table, he beat me up, he pulled me until my skirt got ripped and it fell in front of the class. And he'd always beat me over nothing, like, because my maths was bad and he knew my mom was not there for me to report to, so he'd always. And I couldn't report to my dad because my dad would not believe that teachers are actually bad given the school I was in. It was a big school in our area, no one would believe it. And then another time came, now my mom had come back. She'd just come back, and I used to be friends with certain girls. And one of these girls, she began complaining in the evening that her fountain pen is missing, it's lost. And people were saying I took her fountain pen, and I never did. Even if they searched my stuff, there was nothing. This girl went and reported me to the class teacher. I was forwarded to the principal, but the principal liked my mom. So it was like a case which could just be solved easily, 25 shillings fountain pen. But then this girl went and told her parents at home that I stole her pen, and the parents came to school. It caused such a huge case, and my dad was brought to school. And then he was made to buy 4 other pens, and now it's like as if I'm a thief and I didn't steal. And then 2 days later, this teacher in class comes and tells the girl, here are your fountain pens. He took her pens and made it seem like it was me who stole her pens, and they got into so much trouble. And at home, my mom can't say anything, so I was also in so much trouble with my dad. At school, it's terrible. At home, it's terrible. And I really couldn't report. I told my mom that story 2 years ago. That's when I told my mom everything that used to happen.
It was repetitive abuse. So this was in my 3rd year of high school. I hadn't done so many co-curricular activities and time was catching up on me. So I was told to join, I won't mention the club, because if anyone is watching this, they'll know, like they could derive what I'm talking about. So I won't be very particular about that, but I'll be particular about the events. So I joined this club, and since it was one of the most prestigious ones, we used to be locked up, and we used to be beaten until someone quit. Like for every session that you'd have, we used to be beaten until someone would give in and say that they did not want to be part of it. So we started out as 100 of us, and towards the end there was only 20 of us left. So if you do your math, that's 81 beatings.
One time in my house, another time in someone's house. I was raped 2017 by a neighbor. I was going outside to buy groceries, and then someone called me and told me we go turn up around school, USIU. So I went. It was a house party, we drank and everything. And around 3 a.m. I felt like I know my limits, right? So I stopped drinking and everything, and I decided to lie down in the living room. So what woke me up was the owner of the house on top of me. He had already removed my clothes. He was penetrating me, and his friend was beside me trying to like soothe me. I don't know whether he was waiting to go next. And then now, the other time now, last year, February, someone I've grown up with, I've known him from class 5. So he's been to my house multiple times. He slept over multiple times because he used to be in USIU as well. So we were at the club, and around 4, he told me I was leaving. He wanted to come to my house and spend over because he had a 9 a.m. class, and his house is really far from school. I didn't mind. So we left the club with him and 2 other girls. They all came to my house. We got home, changed into pajamas, entered the bed. We had alcohol from the club, so I told them they can keep on drinking if they want. I was tired, I just wanted to sleep. So I left for him a mattress in the sitting room. Remember, we were 4 people. Definitely the girls sleep together, the boy sleeps alone. And what woke me up was him. He was right there. There was one girl in bed with us. It's like she was hearing everything, but she didn't respond. And yeah, he was penetrating me at my own house. So I just kicked him out.
Growing up, mom and dad had issues to a point that they split up. So they split up till around 2010 when mom came back. So back then I never had my own room back then growing up. Since, our home is like a 3-bedroom. So my sisters had each a bedroom, and then there was the master for the parents. So growing up, I used to use my parents' bedroom. So there was this specific night dad came in drunk, and he sexually molested me. I was about 5 or 6, can't clearly recall.
Despite the impeccable multisectoral prevention and response intervention initiatives in Kenya, the number of reported cases continue to persistently decline. The pattern of chronic underreporting is due to victims' external social factors such as discriminatory traditional norms, shame or fear, and internal psychological barriers such as repressed trauma. A victim's choice to report an incident of rape is often crippled by the fear of social recrimination, loss of privacy, threats of reprisal, and the probability of apprehension of the perpetrators is a piped dream in most cases. Underreporting weakens the link between crime and punishment.
The first one, I went immediately. The one that happened in 2017. It was Kasarani police station. So I was hearing things from the officers like, what were you wearing at that party? Were you too drunk? Who asked you to go there? Stuff like that. That was coming from male officers. They were literally speaking about my story when I'm there writing my statement. And then the female who took my case was reluctant on helping me. So when it happened again 2018, I went to the same station again. And like, it's you again. It's like, they make me feel like I wanted all of this to happen to me. So yeah, basically the cops, they were reluctant, expecting to be paid first so they can assist me and everything. I even had to fuel their car to go look for the guy and everything. To come to school again, I had to fuel the car.
Thinking about it right now, I don't know why, but at that time I felt as if it was cowardly. It wasn't the manly thing to do. I was promoted and I was called Iron Man because I never once broke the cycle of the beatings. I never once told them to stop. They would beat me until they felt whatever it is that they would feel. And it had its toll on me. But at that point I thought the scars and everything was worth it for me to be a man. And every time I would walk out of that place that we would go to, the younger people than me and the older people would tell me that they respected me because of what they'd seen that I could endure. So I did not report it because it would be cowardly, and I would feel as if I was working against myself.
I couldn't tell my dad because he did not believe that the teachers in that school were bad, and I couldn't tell my mom because I was like, even if I tell my mom, she has no power at all in this house or anything. I did not want her to put her into more trouble. My dad sees her siding with the troublemaker of the house.
I guess part of me kind of convinced myself it was just a dream. It wasn't like something real. I just told myself it was a dream. I actually faced like this part of the abuse like recently when I began going for therapy.
Power, gender inequalities, traditional cultural norms, and gender stereotypes are key contributing factors to this prevalent public health and human rights issue. These factors not only exacerbate violence, but also propagate negative notions which foster rape culture and victim blaming. From the empirical perspective and the reasons documented in the Crevit Mulier research data, these not only influence the performance of health practitioners, law enforcement officers, but also influence the response of the criminal justice professionals to cases of rape.
If someone sustains some kind of injury, or let's say an adult female is raped, or even a child, the current process is that what usually happens is that the victim will either go to a police station and report the issue, then be sent to a hospital to have a medical examination done, specimens collected, the whole procedure at the hospital done, and then when they get a medical report, they take it to the police station. They'll then be issued with, by then there may or may not have been an OB number issued, which is an occurrence book number to show that this has been entered into the police records, and then they'll be issued with a P3 form. A P3 is also called a Kenya Police Medical Report form. And this form is owned, or the custodian of this form is the police, the Kenya Police. At the medical facility, what will be filled, may or may not be filled out, is a post-rape care form, which is owned, so to speak, by the Ministry of Health. So after getting the P3 form, the victim then has to find a government-employed medical officer to complete the form. Now, as in the police surgery, that's what I would be doing. So I would be the second or third examiner in a long chain of events, specifically focused on completion of the P3 form. And so what it entails is conducting, the ideal thing to do is always examine a patient in front who is presented to you and document your findings on the medical report availed, which would be the P3 form, and compile a report. After that, what happens is that the P3 will then be returned to the police station. It's a long, chaotic process, and put in a police file, and then the police will then present it to the prosecution for, to follow the judicial process. Now, for adults can choose whether they are going to continue with this process or not. They can drop charges or wait, whatever it's up to them. But where children are involved, and children are individuals under 18, the process has to proceed. There's no option. Yeah, that's basically it. And then now, as a forensic medical practitioner or any other professional involved in this case, we will then be summoned or bonded to appear in court as an expert witness. So I'll go and read out my findings and explain what it is that, give my opinion as an expert to the court.
I did go to hospital, of course, because of the medicine. I need to make sure you're safe. And it's the same thing. They treat you like you're doing them a favor. Like it's them who need help, not you who needs help. So
I didn't know that I was not supposed to take a shower. I took a shower 5 times. Later on in the morning, I went to the hospital that was closed there. Then they told me to go to the police station. I went to the police station. The police were asking me for 5,000 shillings to come and check my house, how it was broken into, and I'm like, okay, I don't have money, everything is gone. So I left the police station. They didn't help me in anything, in any way. So I went back to the house, just stayed there. Then later on, because I was working with I was partnering with the Nairobi Women Hospital, I called them, then they brought an ambulance to come and take me to the hospital.
So number one, we've discussed the knowledge gaps. Then secondly would be corruption is a major problem. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's the truth. There is corruption. There are corrupt practices at various institutions, requiring victims and even suspects to pay for services that they should get for free. And this also, corrupt practices frustrate the system. And so files go missing, someone can't afford to pay for the P3 form. Someone can't afford to pay the doctor or the clinical officer or the clinician, whoever it is, or whichever officer it is at a medical facility to get the examination done. Sometimes you don't know who it is. People will say doctor when it's not a doctor, as long as it's in a medical facility, and other such things. And then just red tape and bureaucracy, where certain people don't want you to, are not pro-development and pro-growth, so they just hamper the system a lot when it's unnecessary.
My cases have not been approved. It's been back and forth. It's a roller coaster.
In about 2013, I'd been working as a police sergeant for a year, and I noticed so many things that were really disturbing me. I mean, I couldn't even sleep. Many times I would hear, by the time I was seeing all these children who've been defiled, the bulk of the cases I deal with are children who have been sexually violated. And that would be like 80% of the victims being children. And I mean like age 2, 3, 4, up to 12, 15 years of age. And many times, when I'd listen to the history I'm being given, it's that, mom sent the child to the neighbor to get this or that. Mom left the child with a stranger, or, things that to me were rather obvious not to do, because you can't just trust anyone with your children, or sending children around at night. And so for a long time, I tried getting someone to listen, and like a journalist, for example, could you please talk about this and tell people not to do the following because it places their children in trouble? Could you please tell moms not to trust all their boyfriends with their kids? Boyfriends they barely know, because most perpetrators in my line of work have been fathers, mothers, boyfriends, and stepdads. So you have to be a bit cautious when you're leaving your children with anyone. You don't just be so trusting. Children being defiled in taxis by, people who are very close to them, uncles, neighbors, watchmen, teachers. So I remember the one story that really bothered me. I just said, okay, that's it. We are going to start writing articles. And since I can own my own website, why not? It's a lady who told me that she allowed a stranger into her home after they'd known each other on Facebook for 1 week, and she had children. And so this person, already as she was giving me the history, I could pick that this was a very, obviously there were red flags all over. I could hear it, but you see, not everyone can. And so I decided to just stop procrastinating and start writing articles on vunjakimya.com. And so that's how Vunjakimya was born. I wrote many articles to try and warn people about certain things, and just educate people on what needs to be done, educate people on what the P3 form is, the processes to follow, how to report child abuse, how to recognize it, and so on and so forth. And so after that, I registered Vunja Kimya as an international non-government organization so that we can at least attract funds to do more, to go out there and work with the communities, to educate people, whether it's online, by way of doing videos, whether it's writing articles, publishing books, you know, just outreach, even going to homes where you have sexually abused children, how to deal with their cases, you know, in terms of the medical legal aspect of things, the social aspect of their cases, and several other things which are available on the website. And that's how Vunja Kimya Foundation came to be.
Personally, because I partook it first, and I don't think we have a legal system that is ready to assist, especially when you don't have money to mingle with them and maybe give them cash. We don't have anybody who can help you in the system in Kenya right now.
The first step to breaking the insidious culture of survivors and victims of domestic violence and SGBV being humiliated publicly during trial is a trauma-informed and community-led training to enable judicial officers to understand the plight of victims firsthand.
When you have a survivor of sexual-based violence, most of them come to court as witnesses. So we have cases that range from very young children all the way to the adults. And so we deal with these witnesses at different levels and in different manner. The Sexual Offences Act at Section 31 provides for how to deal with vulnerable children, witnesses. So this mainly will include the children who are not very comfortable speaking out about the trauma that they go through. So the prosecution is endowed to come to us to seek protective orders, which we automatically give in chambers. So if they think that their lives are in danger, we come and give the protective orders. So then they go and keep them in haven houses until they testify. Yeah, we also have seen in most of the cases when they go to see the doctors, recommendations for counseling, so that they are counseled and they are able to come off that trauma. The other aspect in court that we deal with is with a view to having the rights of the victim, now the witness who is the victim, protected in a manner that they can be able to get their advocates and they can be able to advance their rights and their constitutional provisions through their witness, not through witnesses, through their lawyers, so that they can be able to speak out, and they can also be able to be heard and well represented if they have lawyers as victims. They are witnesses for the prosecution, but at the same time, they are also witnesses at the same time. So protective orders in one limb. Number two, the rights of the victims under the Victims Protection Act, which we are very keen to ensure that we adhere to it.
I actually shared my story on Instagram. Yeah, I did last year, February. So everyone was reposting my story on Instagram. And yes, there was both negative and positive feedback. The backlash was insane. I'd see posts from people I don't even know. And what hurt me the most was if it's coming from women, telling me that I threw myself to those people, considering I had never had any relations with any of them, whether it was sexual or what before, prior to that. So the backlash was insane. There's some family members who like alienated themselves because they're like, I'm now known as the girl who got raped, you know. So they don't want to be affiliated with that. And then friends, I lost so many, because the moment someone wants to side with a rapist, to me, you're dead to me. Because it doesn't matter whether you didn't commit the act. The fact that you're able to interact with such a person, it means that those are the kind of values you probably have as well. So it's been a lot, but society, let me tell you, I think the way they say every man for themselves, it's true. Because that, after I opened up, it showed me who's literally there for me and who's not. Because I'd have people I haven't talked to in 5 years texting me and calling me. Once I stopped posting about it, disappeared again. Like they were just there just to ask, not to help. You know, they just want to know what's going on. Udaku, basically. Yeah. I wish the judicial system was keen on dealing with survivors of any form of abuse, because there's no way you're going to tell me that people are able to pay bail after raping, after murdering, after assaulting, after whatever it is, whatever form of abuse it is, and still go back out there to the society and do the same thing over and over again. There are people who are in very high positions who use money to get out of, when they do these things, they use money to get out of this problem, and they live a scot-free life. You know, I feel like our judicial system needs a lot of amendments, a lot, because things like marital rape were not recognized in the Constitution. You're being told, no, it's your husband, you're supposed to submit, it's your wife, you're supposed to give her what she wants. So if they sodomize you or if they rape you, there's nothing you can do, because apparently you guys have a legal contract together, you know. But yeah, the judicial system really needs to work on how to deal with these reports of abuse, because they are getting out of hand. People are being butchered left, right, and center, being raped. And then the worst part is, it's harder for people to open up when they see there's nothing being done. And what kills me the most is, I know men go through so much and they don't share. They do not share. That's why you find the even higher chances of suicide. Men are highly likely to kill themselves compared to women, because at least us women, we know women like talking, emotional. It's easy for them to express themselves. But for a man being brought up, maybe toxic masculinity, and you're told, no, men don't cry, men don't express their emotions. So men also really need to be given like ways to be able to talk about what they go through openly without feeling like they're less manly or anything, because I feel like there's a huge gap there that needs to be filled. Yes.
Hapo siku za kale mama hangempiga mume. Haijapata kuwa ya kwamba bibi angempiga bwana. Hiyo ni maneno ambayo hatukuwa na vocabulary yake.
To these two old men of another generation, an unheard of marital challenge, but not so much the current generation. At the Mulier District Hospital in Nyeri, the now all too familiar stories told from behind the window panes of yet another hospital ward, the pains of yet another man in the hands of his better half.
Crevit Mulier's 2018 research paper titled Judicial Sensitivity Training, a One-Way Ticket to Gender Justice Reform, highlighted a wide spectrum of policies and laws hindering effective and efficient access to justice. Aside from technical issues collecting data or recording statements by survivors, the judiciary play a vital role in the process and highly influence survivor confidence in reporting incidents. The research identified and illustrated the daunting and horrid challenges faced daily by men and women in the struggle to access justice, and provide a blueprint for the judiciary to reclaim public confidence by creating a conducive environment to access courts and responsive justice for all through disciplinary action, trauma-informed, sensitivity training curriculum, skills enhancing, and capacity building of judicial officers.
has stunned Italy, provoking widespread protests from judges, lawyers, politicians and the media. One newspaper said the ruling that it was impossible to rape a woman in jeans could be seen as a manual for aspiring rapists. Female lawmakers are calling for action. They want women across the country to join a skirt strike and wear jeans.
And we will wear jeans until this judgment will be changed, because it's very dangerous that a woman can be stuprata, raped for jeans.
The president of the appeals court who signed the sentence says it's been misunderstood. The phrase has no relevance taken out of context. He says the jeans only further confirmed that proof of violence was very dubious. And he says he would make the same ruling again. I strongly believe in my actions, he says, and I would repeat them. I think they're right. But Italian women disagree. They say the ruling that it's impossible to take off tight jeans without the cooperation of the person wearing them has set Italy's justice system back decades.
New fallout over the judge who issued a controversial ruling in the Stanford sexual assault case. Judge Aaron Persky was blocked from presiding over a new sexual assault hearing involving an unconscious woman. In a statement, the district attorney said, quote, "After the recent turn of events, we lack confidence that Judge Persky can fairly participate in this upcoming hearing."
Critics say that the judge's 6-month sentence of former Stanford swimmer Brock Turner was too light.
A South Jersey judge could be suspended for telling a sexual assault victim that she could, quote, close her legs. An ethics committee said Ocean County Judge John Russo should be suspended for 3 months without pay for his comment. He's been on administrative leave since 2017.
A judge in the US has been censured for his handling of a rape case involving 2 teenagers. Judge James Troiano said the 16-year-old boy who had filmed and shared the incident with his friends should not be tried as an adult because he was from a good family and attended an excellent school.
This New Jersey judge under fire tonight after declining the prosecutor's motion to try a 16-year-old accused of sexually assaulting another teen as an adult last summer. The family court judge citing that the young man was an Eagle Scout who comes from a good family who put him into an excellent school where he was doing extremely well.
This is absolutely an example of privilege playing out in the judicial system.
The teen allegedly took video of the attack and shared it with friends, texting, "When your first time having sex was rape." But Judge James Troiano, seen here on this website that rates judges, says he believes there's a distinction between a sexual assault and rape. He goes on to classify rape as generally 2 or more males involved, either at gunpoint or weapon. Critics say it shows a deep bias in the judge's decision-making.
I would be shocked to see this result in any case where the defendant came from a family that didn't have financial means to send their son to a good high school and that they were college bound. That doesn't happen in those cases.
An appeals court has now reversed his decision, and that teen will be treated as an adult. In the meantime, there are now calls for that judge to be removed.
Two years ago, Justice Said Chitembwe caused an outcry when he freed a man convicted of defiling a 13-year-old girl because she behaved like an adult and enjoyed it. Explaining why he freed that person, the judge said that where a child behaves like an adult and willingly sneaks into a man's house for sex, the court should treat such a child as a grown-up. Now, moving on with the story, the judgment has been voted as the world's worst court decision for women's rights by the Gender Justice and Covered Awards.
To continue to fight for families and communities to receive responsive, empowering services and support to meet the needs of survivors and eliminate the recurrence of oppressive social institutions.
At the St. Francis Community Hospital in Kasarani, Peter Karaoke gives a blank stare to the attending nurses. At a glance, he looks rather calm, but he knows too well how lucky he is to still be alive. On the 11th of November last year, he says his wife came home and started a confrontation that would lead Karaoke straight to a hospital ward.
She asked me, "Do you know that I can burn you?" I dared her to do that. And then I didn't know that she was serious.
The first glaring issue is that we don't really have forensic experts in the country who are trained specifically to deal with cases of sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and all this. It is viewed as a gender problem more than anything else. And so you'll even find a lot of decision-making officers will just be like, gender. The word gender just shuts a lot of progress down, because the gender is equated to female, woman issues, someone else can deal with it. It's not that important. That's my own personal observation. But it should be also viewed as a serious crime, serious criminal activity, because many times what you have is death, homicide. And you have children who grow up in these environments that, you know, they end up being very violent individuals or dysfunctional individuals themselves. So what you have is just a repeat cycle, vicious cycle that goes on and on and on, and seems to be getting worse, as is obvious from the news headlines this year have been quite crazy. So for me, that's the first, if I had a choice, if I was in a position to make serious decisions and guide the nation as to what needs to be done, the first thing I would do is select medical officers and have them trained in forensic medicine, because then they will carry the knowledge, skills, and experience required to bring about the right changes in a scientific, evidence-based manner. Currently, we don't have experts. We already have very few forensic experts. Most of them are forensic pathologists. We have 2 forensic dentists and 1 clinical forensic medical officer. Clinical forensic medicine is what I do, where you're dealing with the living injured. So there's what in the country, 1. So you can see how that would be a problem. So what you end up having is medical officers, clinical officers, nursing officers who do their best to do what they think is right. Some may have training, most may not, because I do get officers calling me asking me what am I supposed to do. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think. I actually guess through the whole process, or the guidelines do not help me enough. Do you think you could come and train us? You know, because evidence is not just about collecting a high vaginal swab, which is what most people know, high vaginal swab. Even in a 2-year-old, we're talking about high vaginal swabs, which makes me scream, because I'm like, you don't do that to a 2-year-old. So, you know, evidence collection goes beyond just specimens. It begins from observations of the victims, just like any patient. When a doctor is examining any patient, it begins from the minute they walk into the room. So even for forensic examinations, it's all that. How is their body language? What are they wearing? Quick mental status assessment. From the history, you can then decide, the history is what guides the collection process. What are you going to collect, and how will you preserve it, and how will it be labeled, and who is it given to next, and all that. What's the chain of custody? There's so much information that needs to go into the forensic medical process. And so that's what I think is lacking in the country.
There are very, very many problems that affect the collection, use of forensic evidence in domestic related violence. The first one that comes to mind is when the victims themselves do not know what they are required to do to preserve the evidence that may be used in the forensic. The police or the investigators also do not know how the scene ought to be preserved because they are not trained in this area. Thirdly, we do not even have the forensic equipment and chemicals that are sometimes required to analyze some of the evidence. And once this evidence is presented in court, sometimes the judicial officers themselves are not exposed or trained in some of these areas.
There's a lot of training in SGBV or GBV, or a lot of training by all manner of people. Everyone is training in SGBV, which is why we have a big problem, because everyone is training. So, you know, there's this, for example, there's this hospital that approached me and said, oh, Daktari, now we are treating sexual violence victims, SGBV victims, because now sexual violence is called SGBV. It's not called a sexual offense, which, you know, is a bit twisted. Like, it needs to be clarified some more. But anyway, they'll tell me they do this and that we need to send patients to them. So you have people training who don't have the qualifications to train, they don't have the knowledge to train, they don't have the experience. If you don't have the experience, you really should not be training, because you can't equip the participants with the information they need.
I'm aware that there was heavy government investment in a lab that was going to rival even those in the developed countries. And this lab was going to help in forensic investigations. I'm not quite sure how far it's gone, but I think it's an important thing to have that lab so that we are able to get evidence that can be used conclusively in trials.
One of our recommendations to the National Committee on Criminal Justice Reform is to establish a specialized court that handles matters of gender violence, to make criminal justice responsive to the needs of gender violence holistically for both men and women. Because through my study at Nairobi Women's Hospital, we've seen that men also don't come forward because, again, of structural misogyny and all these other things that we keep highlighting, why they wouldn't come forward to the justice or to the health sector for that. Do you think it would be sustainable for the judiciary to have such a section in the court, to have its own division for gender, considering the statistics, about in a year about 5,153 cases brought forward?
That's definitely a very good idea, but it's not practical in my circumstances, because I have had similar requests, more or less similar requests from very many groups. I have those kind of requests from the business communities, like banks want specialized divisions to deal with banking cases, this and that and that. If I were to compartmentalize, what do you call it? Yes, the court into all divisions, we don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers of judicial officers and magistrates to have all these. Maybe the best thing we need to do is constant training and bringing into the attention of the judicial officers that, look, we are being insensitive in some of these areas. We are not getting the feedback from the court users and the victims. So where you get reports like those ones of people shying off, you know sexual violence acts, like victims, because of stigmatization, they will not even want to come up, but they are suffering. We have had cases like very young children, they can't stand and testify looking at they are molesters. So that's why we have the witness boxes. We have got them in some stations like Nakuru. We have a very good witness box, so that they don't that visual contact during the hearing is not there. So what we need to do is to train, starting with the police to whom these offences are reported. In fact, when I was in the High Court, I had organized a training for chiefs and assistant chiefs in the village to whom these reports are first made. When they get those reports, they will tell them, look, you come next week. They even advise them to go and shower and do all that, and of course destroy the evidence. So we had the training for chiefs and the assistant chiefs and told them, look, when a girl comes with that kind of complaint, don't advise them to go showering and doing that. Instead, bring them up as they are so that we preserve evidence. So training is one area we should be looking at.
It is not so easy to come and testify how somebody came and undressed you, raped you, or even defiled you. Most of these cases on sexual assault involve children. Honestly, for a child to just come and speak it in bare language becomes quite difficult. I've also seen instances, secondly, where the prosecutors also feel shy to lay bare the evidence as it is. And therefore, at the end of the day, when you deliver this evidence, it doesn't come out quite clearly it was defilement. I'll just give an example where a child comes and says in Swahili, somebody did tabia baya to me. But for us, we know under the law, defilement means the penetration of a genital organ into the genital organ of another. So when asking the child or a witness, please describe what that genital organ is, be it in Kiswahili, English, or even their language, it becomes quite difficult. So stigma is one issue, both at court when testifying and also societal. In this sense, no one wants to be heard to have been raped or to have been defiled. And so what happens is that the family cover up because they do not want to be associated with such a trauma. So most people don't come out to report, or even when they report, they are unwilling to go to court to testify.
I have a report that explains the fragmentation of services, and you know, it costs the country a lot of money, just this back and forth, up and down. There's a report by National Gender Equality Commission on this, the cost on survivors of sexual violence or GBV. So the reason there's all this fragmentation, part of the reason there's fragmentation and frustration, and that also I forgot to add is why what hampers progress in prosecution is the fragmentation. There's just too many things all over the place, no order, no coordination. We have no authority, no regulation, no oversight. People just go around doing what they want and call themselves GBV experts or GBV centers, yet, you know, there's no criteria on what is required before calling a place a GBV center or GBV expert or GBV specialist. Kenya needs to come up with its own set of criteria, and even gazette personnel who can be called certain terms, like a forensic examiner or a GBV expert. What exactly is that? It's a bit ambiguous, and it also causes a dilution of information by the time you're getting to a courtroom.
Taking it into our country, corruption is a close second. That this is a person high up in whichever status in society, this is a person who is high up somewhere, and if I report them, who would listen to me? I am simply the wife of this person, you know, or this is the son or the daughter of someone great. So if I report them, it will be written something like, you know, these people have so much power. So it's essentially it's fear. In all of those, it's fear that who will take my word for it.
I wish the judicial system was keen on dealing with survivors of any form of abuse, because there's no way you're going to tell me that people are able to pay bail after raping, after murdering, after assaulting, after whatever it is, whatever form of abuse it is, and still go back out there to the society and do the same thing over and over again.
There's need for training at all levels, and also there's need to equip the current government chemists, because right now I do not think they have sufficient equipment to carry out its function. And again, another thing that courts have found to be lacking is the manpower. Sometimes you have only 2 forensic experts in those labs who have to crisscross from courts in Busia to courts in Lamu, and this also delays the determination of these cases. So for me personally, I think there's need for all the 3 arms of government to work together, and also all the players in this sector to work together.
Let us be outspoken, let people be sensitized, and let the courts also be proactive, notwithstanding the evolving jurisprudence that you cannot impose the minimum mandatory sentences where need be. Protect them by imposing those sentences because they are there for a reason.
The good thing is that there are several organizations and institutions interested in fixing this problem. That is a very good thing because it means there are people who care. And another good thing is that many of these organizations, most of them are NGOs, are very well funded, and they have the voice and the financial machinery to bring about a positive change. So I truly believe that with all these interested parties who want to bring about change, who want to promote social justice, who want to assist the voiceless.
So the greatest question for a judicial officer, myself, sitting in court and handling these kinds of cases. Of course, as the court, as we're handling this matter, we try the most we can to accommodate the survivors, we call them victims at that point, by just taking out the sentiments, the opinions, and then considering it in coming to a just decision. But the bigger question is who is looking out for the survivors, post the case and everything that goes on. As a court, I had a lot of difficulty in trying to get an organization that would come and help the survivor in this case, okay? There's not enough material out there that looks out at, for the survivor post the case. I do not think, and I may be wrong, that there is legislation in law and any instrument that then supports the survivors in terms of, are there structures out there, are there organizations that are working purely by the government, the safe houses that we are talking about? And if they're there, are they devolved to everywhere in the country so that even us who are away from the city where everything happens, we're able to get help for the victims? And in any event, if these things, if these systems exist, can the courts then be exposed to this kind of information so that whenever we encounter these kinds of cases, we are able to help the survivors post the case? That is the elephant in the room, and that is the only question that as a judicial officer, I pose to everyone.
I've been able to forgive. I don't know them, though later on through the journey, 2 of them were caught selling my clothes and they were shot. They were shot dead. But I forgave them. They did something that it's unbelievable. Rape is something that is unbelievable. The pain of rape, I don't have the right words to describe it, the pain of rape. But I was able to forgive them so that I can be able to move on.